We'll start in 2 3 minutes. Good evening and welcome to week 5 of Structure Analysis 1 taught by Professor Amit Shah. I'm Trisha Chakraborty, one of the course teaching assistants. I'm a PhD student at the Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore. I'll start with a brief recap of the previous 4 weeks. In week 1, we looked at the types of internal forces: shear bending moment, torsional moment, and axial force. Then the common classification of elements and boundary conditions. So, truss element, beam, and frame elements, and boundary conditions like pinned support, pinned or hinged, roller support, fixed support, and so on. And structural indeterminacy and bending moment and shear force diagram. So, bending moment and shear force diagram are drawn along the length of a beam. And in week 2, we looked at idealization of trusses, stability of trusses, and how to solve the member forces in a truss using method of joints or sections. So this point, bending moment and shear force diagram of beam, and solving the member forces of truss are kind of analogous problems. That is solving the force or stress responses in trusses and beams. Then week 3, 4, and now 5 focus on the other type of response, which is displacement or strain type response. So in week 3, we started with the principle of virtual work and the unit load method to determine displacements in a truss. In a truss, since all the joints are pinned, and all the members only transfer axial force, if we know how much each node is being displaced, we know the entire deformed shape of the truss. So what unit load method helps us do is find the x displacement and y displacement for each node, and you can use like the square root of sum of squares to find out the net displacement in which direction. And now week 4 and 5 are about the displacement response in beams. In beam, it is approached in a slightly different manner. So we want to draw the deflection profile along the length of the beam, just like we draw BMD and SFD. So we week for previous week, deflection of beams using elastic curve equation method, which is like every physical phenomenon is actually governed by a differential equation. So the it is a second order differential equation. So that is d2w dx square, where w is the vertical deflection as a function of x, where x ranges goes from 0 to L along the length of the beam. So by double differentiating that, we get w as a function of x, which is the deflection profile. Then you can draw it, or you can find the deflection at any given x. And there are simplifications, like this is a very direct method from the first principles and also a lengthy method. So there are two approximation. One is the moment area method, and one we will look at is the conjugate beam method. So moment area method works on two principles: the first moment area theorem and the second moment area theorem, and both of them give us some shortcuts to find for the deflection and slope at different points depending on the geometry. The conjugate beam method also does that, and conjugate beam and momentary method will give you the same answer, and as will the elastic curve method. So this is the lengthiest method, and it will, once you have w as a function of x, you know everything about the entire deflection profile. Just like when you know when you have the bending moment diagram or the shear force diagram, you can find out the value of bending moment and shear force at any point along the length of the beam. But momentary and conjugate beam method are approximation methods. They're not approximation, but they are shortcut methods. So for for these two methods won't give you the entire deflection profile output, but they will give you relevant deflection or slope, so long as you can apply it accurately, apply it smartly between 2 points. An analogy to this is the method of sections and method of joints. So in method of joints, if you go from joint to joint, from one end to another, you will end up with the member forces of all the members of the truss. So that is what is meant by solving the truss entirely. But method of sections is again a shortcut method. So if you cut a section, if you want the member forces in certain members only, then you can cut a section through those members and just solve 2 3 equations to find those member forces. You're not solving the entire truss, but you might not need to. So in especially in competitive exams like gate, this kind of method of sections is very important. And here momentary or conjugate beam method, you both of these are taught, but both of them are almost analogous. So learning any one properly would be enough for competitive exams, because there you won't be asked which method you're using to solve. But in theoretical exams, you might be asked to solve a particular method. So these two methods need to be studied. Terminologies in beam theory: neutral surface. A beam is formed by many fibers aligned longitudinally. Under action of downward transverse load, fibers near the top of the beam contract and fibers near the bottom of the beam extend. This will the opposite will happen if there is an upward force. Like if there is a if here the beam is sagging like this, if you put an upward force, it will undergo hogging deformation. In that case, the fibers towards the bottom will contract and towards the top will extend. But anyway, there will be one plane in between where there is neither any elongation nor any shortening. So the plane where the fibers of the beam do not change their length is called the neutral surface. The axis of the beam is a now the neutral surface is a 2D, like when you treat the beam as a 3D object, like suppose this is the beam. So the neutral surface is something like this, but but then you approximate it as a 2D 2D plane, like you just see this plane, then you can see the neutral axis, like the surface is this, and the surface cuts this plane and one line only, that is called the neutral axis. So the axis of the beam is the interaction of the neutral surface and longitudinal symmetry. Deflection curve: when the beam is loaded, the neutral axis or surface deforms into a curve, which is called a deflection curve or elastic curve. So that elastic curve is what we are aiming to find. Now we'll move to the conjugate beam method. This is a structural analysis technique used to analyze beams and frames by transforming real beams into imaginary or conjugate beams. So we apply principles of virtual work and static equilibrium on conjugate beams to solve for unknowns and understand the behavior of the real beam under various loading conditions. So now the as usual as in structural analysis, the inputs that we have in any problem is the structure, the materials, the loading pattern, and the boundary conditions. All of these are always available to us, and then we can use those information to find out the response of the structure in the terms of forced stresses or displacement strains. So the force, under the force comes all those bending moment, shear force, axial force, torsional moment, all of those. So here what we do is we apply we are going to combine some principles here for virtual work and static equilibrium on the conjugate beam. And our purpose is to solve for unknowns in the sense, it could be reaction forces and it could be bending moment and shear force, or it could be, no, sorry, not bending moment shear force, it is slope and deflection of the real beam under various loading conditions. So the conjugate beam setup depends on the loading condition in the real beam and also the boundary conditions of the real beam. So there is a principle of duality between real beams and imaginary beams. It is simple enough, but you have to know it. You won't be provided with this data. Like generally in structural analysis, you are not required to memorize everything. Mostly when you use codal provisions, the code is supposed to be provided to you. But this principle of duality, it just has a 3-4 rules. You have to remember those. The real beam is subjected to loads and support conditions. This is, as I said, this is a prerequisite of this problem. You know this. You know what is the loading and support conditions, and also the cross section, length of the beam, the geometric and material properties of the beam. These things are prerequisite in any structural analysis problem. So the real beam is subjected to loads and support conditions. Now we are transforming it into an equivalent imaginary beam, the conjugate beam, which has the same length as the real beam and is subjected to loads equivalent to the bending moments along the length of the real beam. So this transformation simplifies the analysis process. Rules for loading in conjugate beam. The M by EI diagram of real beam is load on conjugate beam. Sign convention is same as that of bending moment diagram. So positive or sagging bending moment is upward load and negative or hogging bending moment is downward load. So like you know that if when you come from the left side, clockwise moment, and when you come from the right side, anti-clockwise moment is positive. So if you have positive or sagging bending moment, you will put the load as upward, otherwise you will put it as downwards. And see, this M by EI term is coming, it was already there in moment area theorem also. So moment area theorems and this conjugate beam method are completely analogous to each other. They can be derived from each other, but we don't have to go into all that details. And you can also see that before the conjugate moment area theorem and conjugate beam method, mostly whatever you have done follows from basic physics principles. So you can understand, like when you are solving a free body diagram, when you are solving for bending moment, you are after all taking a section and solving a free body diagram. Those are just equations of equilibrium, basic principles of physics. And similarly, when you were using the elastic curve method also, it is just solving differential equations of physics. that you can understand why it's happening. Here it seems that the moment area theorems are a kind of convoluted, the statements are a little weird, but they do have a proper physics derivation behind it, but we don't need to go into that. So it's that's why it's a shortcut method. So it uses some derivations, some complicated derivations, and gives you the final result that these are the two moment area theorems. Just apply them directly. Similarly, for conjugate beam, like if you have if you have a beam and you want to find the deflection, you just construct the conjugate beams following the rules. You will wonder that why are we doing this? Why are we loading it with M by EI diagram of the real beam? You don't have to think about that. Like you can go into the derivation from, like, from in the internet somewhere you'll find generally standard books. Even in some standard books you might find, so you will see that this has a proper logic behind it, but the way we are applying it, we are not actually in touch with the logic, so it might seem a little weird, but you just know the rules and follow it. That's why it's a shortcut. Suppose this is a real beam diagram for positive. Suppose there is a moment like this in a beam, like if there is a point load, if a simply supported beam with a point load will have this kind of moment diagram, and then the conjugate beam loading will be, you will divide this entire all these values by EI. So you will just scale the entire diagram down by EI. E is the Young's modulus and I is the moment of inertia, and the conjugate beam diagram for reflection and soap analysis will look like this. Since this was positive bending moment, this is upward loads or upward load of this triangular shape. And then there is a rule. This was a rule for loading. And then now for the conjugate beam, what do you need? You have the length of the beam, which is the conjugate beam, which is the same as the real beam. Now you have the loading pattern also. Now the next thing that we need is the boundary condition in the conjugate beam. So if the real beam has a fixed support, the conjugate beam has a free support, free end at that point. So if for a fixed support, what we mean is that deflection is zero and slope is zero, and if it becomes a free end, it means the deflection is free. It is free to deflect vertically, it is free to rotate completely. But at a free end, moment and shear force is zero. Bending moment and shear force is zero at free ends, you know that. So a fixed support becomes a free end, a free end becomes a fixed support, a hinge support remains a hinge support, and a middle support or a knife edge, like if there is a cantilever, a simply supported beam with an overhang kind of thing, so that becomes an internal hinge, and an internal hinge becomes a knife edge. So these are this is the principle of duality. So we'll go into examples and you'll see how it happens. Okay, so this is a real beam. It's a cantilever beam. It has a fixed end, it has a free end, a point load, and 12 feet. So now the look at the conjugate beam. First we have to draw the bending moment diagram. You know the bending, like by now you would be comfortable enough with bending moment diagram. So when there is a point load, you know that the bending moment diagram is linear. So 3 into, so at this end the moment will be 3 into 12, so 36. It will go from 0 to 36 here. That is the bending moment diagram, 36, whatever the unit is. And to find the M by EI diagram, you just divide this ordinate by EI, so the entire diagram is scaled down by a factor of EI. And this is negative because this is a hogging moment. So if you come from the left side, you are finding an anti-clockwise moment. So this coming from the left side, if you have an anti-clockwise moment, it is negative loading. If it is a negative moment, so you have a downward loading. So this diagram, you just convert into a downward loading here with 36 by EI at this end and 0 here. And this A was a free end, so it becomes fixed here. And this B was a fixed end, so it becomes free here. So now this is my conjugate beam. It has a fixed end, a free end, and a triangular loading on it in the downward direction. So simple enough that we have found the conjugate beam. You can similarly find it for any beam, so long as you have the bending moment diagram, and you can find the bending moment diagram using whatever you have learned so far. Now, what are we going to do with this conjugate beam? Now comes the rules for extracting response of real beam from conjugate beam. Bending moment at any section of the conjugate beam is equal to the deflection of the elastic curve at the corresponding section of the real beam. So I have to find, if I am asked that find the deflection at a point C in the real beam, you have to go to the conjugate beam, and at C you have to find out that bending moment, whatever the magnitude of bending moment is, that is equal to the deflection in the real beam. Shear force at any section of conjugate beam is equal to the slope of the elastic curve at the corresponding section of the real beam. So it is very simple. You can see that now if you have this beam, if I ask at any point, I ask you give me the slope and deflection, you go to that corresponding point and find out the bending moment and shear force at that point, and you have the answer. It is very simple. The sign convention: positive shear force in conjugate beam equals positive slope in the real beam. Positive moment in the conjugate beam equals a positive deflection, upward movement of the real beam. This is simple enough. Steps: first, we draw the real beam with all loads and support conditions. Then, we determine support reactions using equilibrium equations. Draw the conjugate beam with loading corresponding to M by EI diagram of real beam. Apply boundary conditions as per rule specified earlier, the duality thing. Now we will solve for the bending moment. Now see, we are solving for the bending moment twice. Okay, first once we have when we have the original loading and boundary condition of the real beam, you have to draw the entire bending moment diagram to get the loading on the conjugate beam. Now, once you have the conjugate beam, you can choose to solve the bending moment profile of the entire conjugate beam, which will be different from what was in the real beam, right? Because in the real beam here, there was only one point load, so the bending moment diagram was just a straight line like this. But just now, forget about the real beam and look at the conjugate beam. This is a cantilever with a triangular loading, so the bending moment diagram here is not going to be a straight line. It's going to be a 3 degree like for you for point load, bending moment diagram is linear. For UDL, uniformly distributed load, bending moment diagram is parabolic. And for linearly distributed load in triangular pattern, the bending moment diagram will be a 3 degree cubic polynomial. So here first the bending moment diagram solving was easy enough. Now here, if you want the entire deflection profile, you have to find out the entire bending moment diagram of the conjugate beam again. But generally, you won't be asked that entire profile. You will be asked that just given a point and asked to find the deflection at that point. So you don't really need to solve the entire bending moment diagram of the conjugate beam. You just need to find out the bending moment at that point, and you can just do that by cutting a section and solving a free body diagram. So, um, solving for bending moment using concept of virtual work or regular technique to draw BMD of the conjugate beam, convert back to real beam, convert the obtained bending moments and shear forces into displacement and slope of the real beam. These are the steps. It's quite easy to follow. So if, so long as you accept that they are not intuitive, these steps are something you wouldn't be able to predict. If I give you any problem today, any frame that you have not seen before, any complicated problem, and I ask you to solve the boundary conditions, you can write down the equations of equilibrium and solve it, because that is intuitive, and that comes directly from equations of equilibrium, which you know in a 3D plane. You know there are 6 equations of equilibrium, what they are going to look like. But this moment area method and conjugate beam method, I'm saying again, they are not intuitive. So you cannot, like, if you don't teach someone this method, they cannot automatically solve it. So but once you know the rules, they are quite simple to follow. It's one of the easiest method, the easiest topics in this course. Yeah. So we look at examples. So we go to the previous question. Using the conjugate beam method, determine the slope and deflection at point A of the cantilever beam. So this is a free end. So this is free to deflect and free to rotate completely. So we have drawn the conjugate beam already. This is the bending moment diagram. Then we have drawn the conjugate beam with this kind of loading and this kind of boundary condition. Now, to solve the slope and deflection at point A, what do we need? We need the bending moment at A, and we need the shear force at A. In other words, we just need the support reactions at A, because A is a fixed support. So whatever is the moment reaction and the vertical reaction at A will be the bending moment and shear force in those diagrams. So M by E diagram, we first draw the bending moment diagram for the beam and divide it by the flexural rigidity. So flexion means bending, okay. So this EI term is what affects the bending, because okay, I'll show this, because EI is also not a intuitive thing. Flexural rigidity. Flexural rigidity is a measure of a structure's member's resistance to bending. Uh, okay, so this is basically why this EI term here is important is just imagine a spring. The spring mass system you would have studied. There's a spring with stiffness K, mass M, and or not forget about even the mass M. Whatever force you give, whatever force you need to make the spring elongate, the property resisting that is the stiffness, that is K. So the higher the K of a spring is, the more force you are going to need to elongate it. So stiffness is that property of rigidity which resists deformation. So similarly for moment, like when you apply a bending moment on a beam, the beam is going to resist, some kind of resistance will come from the beam. It will not just deflect, it will resist and then it will slowly deflect. So the property that resists the bending is a combination of E and I. E is the Young's modulus, which is a material property, and I is the moment of inertia, which is a geometric property. So a beam, any material, like any structural element, is a combination of its material and geometric properties. So if you want to make the beam more flexurally rigid, that is, if you want for the same moment, I want less deformation, less slope to develop in the beam, then you have two ways to do it. You can make the material stronger, so you can increase the Young's modulus of the material. Instead of Fe 250, you like, you can use a Fe 400 or something. And also you can increase the geometric property, so you can increase the dimensions, you can increase the depth or width. Like this I is BD cube by 12, B is the width. So if this is the beam, this is the kind of loading, so they will be bending like this. So look at the cross section. This is the width, this is the depth, this is B, this is D. I is equal to B D cube by 12. So the depth increases it more, affects the rigidity more. So if you increase the depth by 10% or something, the flexural rigidity will jump up because it is proportional to D cube. But even increasing B will increase the flexural rigidity as well, since since I is proportional to B. So that's why this EI term comes. It's a flexural rigidity. It is the property of a beam to resist flexural deformation. So anyway, this was just a background. This is not directly relevant to this method, but it is general knowledge you should have, that why is this term EI coming again and again. And similarly in truss, okay, I'll show this because this kind of intuition is actually quite important, especially in competitive exams. When we were looking at the unit load method of trusses, you saw we saw this term AE coming again and again. Like, why was this term AE in the rules also? The In this formula also there was sigma PKL by AE. So P is some force, K is some force, L is the length of the member. These you can understand, but why is this AE coming? So for a truss member, since it is undergoing axial deformation, AE is the axial rigidity, you can say. E is the Young's modulus, and A is the cross sectional area. So A, similarly, if you want a truss member to be more axially rigid, you can increase the cross section area, you can increase the Young's modulus. So AE is axial rigidity, EI is flexural rigidity. Similarly, for that, like, you will have that for all kinds of, like, torsional rigidity will be there is torsional rigidity is G into J, I think. J is the polar moment of inertia, G is the shear modulus. So this kind of rigidity terms will have one material property and one geometric property. So in trusses, so far since we have only looked at trusses and beams, you know that for trusses that term is AE and for beams it is EI. Now, so we will now coming back to the problem. First, we draw the bending moment diagram for the beam and divide it by flexural rigidity EI to obtain the M by EI diagram, like we did here. Then for the in the conjugate beam, now move to the conjugate beam. Forget the real beam. The conjugate beam loaded with the M by E diagram. The free end in the real beam becomes fixed in the conjugate beam, while the fixed end in the real beam becomes free in the conjugate beam. The M by EI diagram is applied as a downward load to the conjugate beam because it is negative. So it was a sagging moment, so it's negative. Sorry, it was a hogging moment. Hogging means uh, what whatever is happening here, like sagging and hogging are English terms. You can say if you have a centri-supported beam with a downward loading, it does a curve like this, that is called sagging. And in a cantilever beam, if this is fixed and you have a force here, it does a bending like this, that is a hogging profile. Now slope at A. The slope at A in the real beam is the shear at A in the conjugate beam. Now the shear at A in the conjugate is, what is the shear force? What is the reaction here? That will be the total. Since there is only one triangular downward loading, there will be some upward shear force equal to this entire magnitude. So that is half into 12 into 36 by EI. That is how we do it, right? For if it was UDL, we take the intensity of the UDL, multiply it by the length, And if it is a triangular loading, we find the effective, like we find the area of the triangular diagram. So it is half into length into the end magnitude. So half into 12 into 36 by EI. That is it. And be consistent with the units as always. It is very very important. Put all the values in the same consistent unit format. The same sign convention for shear force is used as you have seen before. So the slope in the real beam at point A is 216 feet square by EI. If you put the value of EI, and you get 0.003 radian, and this is in the this direction. And to find deflection at A, the deflection at A in the real beam equals to the bending moment at A of the conjugate beam. The moment of A and the conjugate beam will be, what will it be? So what do we do for finding bending moment? We first take the total magnitude of the load, half into 12 into 36 by EI, and we assume it is concentrated at the centroid. So the centroid of this triangle is 12 by 3 from the base. So this 12 by 3 is 4, right? So 4 feet from B is where I'm going to assume the force is concentrated. So from A it is 8 feet. So half into 12 into 36 by EI into 2 by 3 into 12, which is 8, and it is negative because it's downward loading. So the deflection in the real beam is negative. This is the magnitude, 0.37 inches minus, you get minus, so you interpret it as it is downwards. And even when you are like before, without doing all the calculations, if you just have this like a cantilever beam fixed at this end and a fixed point load, you know that it is going to deflect in a manner like this, so you know that this point is anyway going to come down. So it is not always possible to visualize. This is a very simple problem, that's why you can visualize and say that yes, this point is going downward. Otherwise, the best all we can do is we will put all the signs properly and we will interpret it like that. If I get a negative value, it's downward deflection. If I get a positive value, it is upward deflection. So this is basically covers the entire concept. Now using conjugate beam method, determine slope at support A and deflection under the concentrated load uh, of the simply supported beam at B. E and I values are given. So now let's see how the conjugate beam will look like. So if we will draw the bending moment diagram, by now it should be quite clear to you. The bending moment diagram will look like this: a triangle. At A and at B, the moment will be zero because these A and C are supports which are free to rotate. So the moment will be zero, and the moment will be maximum at this point, and the magnitude will be 12 into 50. Sorry, 24 into 15, which is 180. So and you divide by EI. So 180 by EI is this point. It goes down to zero. It goes down to zero, and this is sagging moment, so it is positive in magnitude. So in the conjugate beam it will go up, and hinge support and roller support remains the same. So this remains a simply supported beam. This end and this end retains its boundary conditions, and it is loaded in a upward triangular loading profile like this. And I want the slope at A, so I need the shear force at this point, and I want the deflection at B, so I want the bending moment at this point. So we first draw the bending moment diagram for the beam and divide it by flexural rigidity EI to obtain the moment curvature. The conjugate beam is loaded with M by EI diagram. At A and C, which are simple supports and G and beam, remain the same in the conjugate beam. The M by EI diagram is applied as an upward load in the conjugate beam because it is positive, it is sagging moment. Reactions for conjugate beam. Now come to the conjugate beam completely. It is a symmetric structure. So the downward reaction at A and the downward reaction at C will be equal to half of the total load. Total load will be half into 30 into 180 by EI, the total area. So half into 30 into 180, and you divide it by half because it's a symmetric structure. AY and BY will be equal, and they will be in the downward direction since the loading is upward. Slope at A in the real beam is shear force at A, and since I've already found out the support reaction AY, that will be equal to the shear force. So the shear at A is in the conjugate beam is 11350 by EI, like we saw it here, and the slope at support A of the real beam is that magnitude, and you put the values of substitute the value of E and I, and you get uh, a value in the clockwise direction since it was negative. And deflection at B in the real beam equals the moment of B of the conjugate beam. So the moment of B at the conjugate, now I want the moment at this point. So draw we'll cut a section at B and we'll come from this side. So to find the moment, this reaction AY will apply a moment AY into 15, and this load, this triangular load, this part from A to B will apply a moment equal to half into 15 into 180 by EI, and the magnitude of the distance will be one third of 15 from B because this is the base here. So let's see, 1350 into 15, that is the moment due to the support reaction, and half into 15 into 180 into 15 by 3. They are in opposite directions because since this was downward, so it applies an anti-clockwise moment, and this force is upward, so it applies a clockwise moment. So you get this magnitude, and again it is negative, so it is downward direction. So summary of deflection of beams. The basic differential equation is EI d2 by dx squared is m of x. So here y is a function of x and m is a function of x. We are assuming E and I are constants, but they can also vary with x. Generally they don't. So we have the elastic curve. Method of double integration. This method involves integrating the equation of the elastic curve twice. This is the equation. If you differentiate it twice, if you integrate it twice, you'll get the y as a function of x. The first integration yields the slope, and the second integration gives the deflection. The constants of integration are determined by considering boundary conditions. Moment area method. The method uses two theorems to determine the slope and deflection at specified points on the elastic curve of the beam. The two theorems are as follows. The first moment area theorem: change in slope between any 2 points on the elastic curve of a beam equals the area of the M by EI diagram between the 2 points. And the second moment area theorem is vertical deflection of point A from the tangent drawn to the elastic curve at point B equals the moment of the area under M by EI diagram between these 2 points about point A. And this method relies heavily on your understanding of the geometry because you have to choose exactly which 2 points. Like these both these moment area theorems are about 2 points, the responses of points, so you have to choose those 2 points carefully. But the conjugate beam method is relatively easy because it has only a very straightforward method. So between the two, I prefer this. I would prefer this if I have a time constraint method. If I'm in a time constraint exam. A conjugate beam has been defined as an imaginary beam with the same length as that of the actual beam, but with a loading equal to the M by EI diagram of the actual beam. The supports in the actual beams are replaced with fictitious support with boundary conditions that will result in the bending moment and shear force at a specific point in a conjugate beam, equaling the deflection and the slope, respectively, at the same points in the actual beam. So this is another example, a two-point loading problem. This is the this is the bending moment diagram, and this is in the sagging moment, so positive. So there will be upward loading. Okay, so that's it from that is it about deflection of beams. Next class we will look at influence line diagrams, which is a response of a beam under rolling or moving loads. So far, whatever we have done, the loads were fixed, right? They were not varying with time. They were not moving with time. The loading and the boundary conditions are remaining fixed. But when we are analyzing structures like a bridge, for example, the commonest example, the wheel loads like the car loads are moving, so you also need to have some structural analysis framework so that you can find the critical responses in a beam under moving load. So that is what influence line diagrams do, that we will look at in the next class. Okay, then I'll end the yes.
One question, ma'am.
Yes, sir.
Hello.
Yes, can you hear me?
Ma'am, there is a simply supported beam.
Yes.
One is hinged, another one is roller.
Yes.
Beyond the roller, there is a overhanging.
Yes.
How to draw the conjugate beam, madam? Because hinged is it can written as hinged,
Yes,
but
the hinge
the roller can be written as a roller or something else internal hinge like that.
will become
I'm confusing, ma'am.
it will become an internal hinge, and the free end, like beyond the roller it was extending, so the free end becomes a fixed support. So it will be,
Uh,
one will be fixed support, the other will be hinged, and in between there will be an internal hinge.
okay, okay, ma'am. But actually, you have shown a sign convention. So you have shown that if there is a roller support, there should be roller support. But
No,
in
but
conjugate beam,
no, the roller support is that is the roller support only assuming that that is the end of the beam. That is at the end of the beam. Because if a roller or hinge is,
ah, yeah, yeah. Even in overhanging, it's a roller, roller
yes,
support is end support beams.
yes, if it's end support, it will remain a roller support.
Yeah, but if it is end support, but it's having some, it has some overhanging,
If it has
so it
overhang,
cannot be.
if it has
Ah,
overhang, then it is not an end support. Then it acts as a knife edge. It is not really a roller anymore. So it has to become an internal hinge, and the free end has to become a fixed support.
oh, fine, 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 madam, fine, fine. Thank you, thank you, thank you. One more question, ma'am.
Yes.
There is a unit load method. Last week you told, ma'am. I have during the assignment I have some doubt, ma'am.
What method?
Unit load method.
Unit load method. Okay.
Yeah, there is a beam or a structures, ma'am. AB is inclined at an angle of 45 degrees,
Okay.
and BD is horizontal.
The it is a beam. It is inclined.
Yeah,
It is like this.
AB is inclined leg, and BC is a horizontal. Half of the
Okay.
portal you assume that is a.
I'm having a little bit of difficulty visualizing it. Can you send me the problem? Can you mail me the problem in a diagram form?
Yeah, I'm attending by mobile, ma'am, but
Or
I'm not able to.
at least
Ma'am,
show me how.
you, yeah, you have one portal frame, half portal frame, ma'am.
Okay, okay, okay.
AB is a
Portal.
column, BC is another beam. But
Okay,
AB columns inclined.
okay, okay. So you,
BC is the yeah, horizontal member.
okay, okay, okay. And see, and
In that, if it is inclined, it is a determinate structure. A is a hinge support, and C is another is a roller support.
okay, okay, okay. So it's in one
Ah,
inclined B column and
in
one
that,
straight beam.
yeah, yeah. In that case, unit load method, you are having the integration m into dx by e. How to take the moment for m and small m?
That you have to go along the length only, that the inclined length. So how, it will not really make a difference whether it is inclined on straight. Like once you are solving the moment m as function of x you are solving,
Oh,
so that will be again along the length, along the inclined length itself.
oh, I am to take along the length. You have to integrate.
Yes,
Instead
yes.
of not you have to project it.
No, 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 no. You have to take
Oh,
along the length. Even
that's
in,
what I didn't got the answer for assignment during that.
okay,
So now
okay,
I can inclined member. Okay, okay, madam. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, thank you.
okay. Uh, we'll meet next class for influence line diagrams. I'll end my
Hello, ma'am.
session. Yes, yes.
Ma'am, please explain the real beam and imaginary beam and how to work with M by EI in a conjugate beam method. I did not some problem in that, man. Okay.
Which, okay, what problem do you have in that? Like,
Real beam and imaginary beam, ma'am.
see, this is the real beam, this is the conjugate beam. So once you have the real beam, you can find the bending moment diagram, right? If you have any beam, you can find the bending moment diagram.
Yes.
So you have the bending moment diagram in a, like, it could be a triangle, it could be a parabola, it could be anything, it could be a flat line. So
Okay.
whatever the magnitude you have of this bending moment, you divide the entire diagram by EI, a factor of EI. So
Okay.
if the magnitude here was 36, so this becomes 36 by EI. So every point becomes scaled down by EI. So that is the M by EI diagram of any beam. You have any beam, you can find the bending moment diagram, and you can find the bending moment by EI diagram. So now that you have that, to find the load of the conjugate beam, you put just this bending M by EI diagram as a loading. So if this was a parabola, if this was the bending moment diagram was a parabola, then the conjugate beam will have a parabolic loading. Do you get it?
Okay. But
That's
ma'am, how it conjugate beam, how it certain come M by EI? I did not understand, ma'am.
that's what I said. This is a shortcut method. The derivation here is not intuitive. You cannot say like from whatever when we are applying conjugate beam, you I mean you can ask that why are we doing M by EI? Why are we putting this as load? That will have
Okay.
a derivation behind it, but we generally don't study it in a UG course. It will have a complicated derivation behind it, but let me try search anyway. Wait. I don't see it because generally in a UG course it is not taught why it is happening. It is just that the rules are taught and you are told to follow these rules, kind of like that. I'm sure if you pursue, you can find some source where it will be where you will get why it is happening. But I would suggest that there's no need to do that because the from the first principles you already know that elastic curve equation method is already from first principles. You have the differential equation, you double integrate it, and you get the equation. That is good enough. And the moment area method and conjugate beam method are just a set of rules, convenient rules, which get helps you get the answer in a faster way. But so long as you understand how to construct this, like you substitute the support reactions like this, you make a fixed as a free, you make free as fixed, and so on, and you find out the loading using the M by AI diagram, you can solve the problems.
Okay, okay. Ma'am, one another question.
Yes.
In fixed beam method,
Hmm.
this principle of superposition or principle of first principle.
Yes.
Yeah. In this chapter, the diagram is mu diagram, and net bending moment diagram.
What diagram and bending moment diagram?
Mu diagram, and net bending moment diagram.
Okay.
Mu mu diagram, and net bending moment. That is the combination of that mu diagram and mu diagram, and the sign convention are in mu diagram that is a positive, and mu diagram as a negative.
Okay. Okay. Just one second. Just one second. Hello. হ্যাঁ ভাই শোন না আমি একটা ক্লাস নিচ্ছি একটু ভিডিও কলে বুঝছিস হুম ওকে ওকে আমি তোকে এক্ষুনি ফোন করছি তোকে 10 মিনিটে ওকে Hmm. Yes, I don't know what you're saying, the mu diagram and the other one. I mean, I don't know what notation you are using. What those mu diagram and the other thing stand for?
Mu diagram in fixed and beam, ma'am.
Okay, we haven't reached that yet here, right? It is one of the end topics.
Okay,
So
but
I'll look into
concept
it.
concept in that, ma'am, m by e. So that is flexure rigidity, flexure rigidity, and K you unknown. You have to say that K, in that case it is the rigid member of that.
Okay.
Okay,
Yes.
M by E. You follow that, M by E.
Yes.
That's why I am asking. Uh,
Okay.
okay, ma'am.
What
You
is your
thought about M by E only. You thought about only M by E.
yes? So what is your question?
Ma'am, steepness. What
Stiffness.
beam steepness got the value as a M by E as a real beam and in the imaginary beam?
M is not part of the stiffness. M is the loading, like load or moment. They are the applied load. That's a force term. EI is the rigidity term, and force by stiffness or rigidity is equal to displacement in some sense. So if
Oh,
rigidity goes up, the displacement is less for the same amount of applied force. So moment is not part of the rigidity. Only EI or AE are part of the rigidity.
okay, but capital M and small m is, ma'am, there, na? Capital M and small m.
Capital
Two,
M is yes, but both of them are moments only. Capital M is the moment pattern due to actual applied load, and small m is due to the unit load, right?
okay,
So both of them are moments, and none of them have anything to do with the stiffness.
okay, okay, ma'am. Okay,
Okay,
thank you, ma'am.
okay, thank you. Then, any other questions, or we'll meet again next week? Okay, thank you. I am ending the class then.